I'm Emily Kirsch, founder and managing partner of Powerhouse Ventures and founder and CEO of Powerhouse Innovation. This is What It Takes, a show about the entrepreneurs making our clean, energy-abundant future a reality. Before we get into the episode, I'm excited to announce that Powerhouse is hiring for 2 roles. First, we're looking for an executive assistant to work with me and our leadership team. We're also hiring a communications and marketing manager to lead our external presence across both Powerhouse Ventures and Powerhouse Innovation and work on this podcast. If either of those roles sound like a fit for you or someone you know, you can learn more at powerhouse-ventures.co/careers or via my recent LinkedIn posts. And now on to this month's episode. If you spend any time on the water, you have probably heard the joke that the best day of the boat owner's life are the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat. For today's guest, that line isn't just a joke, it's a problem statement. Mitch Lee grew up around boats. He loved being on the water, but he also experienced firsthand how loud, smelly, maintenance-heavy, and frustrating boat ownership can be. And once electric vehicles started proving what was possible on land, one idea kept coming back to him. If electrification made sense in cars on the road, it actually made even more sense in boats on the water. Mitch is the co-founder and CEO of Arc Boats, an electric boat company building both consumer and commercial vessels. Arc started in the premium wake sport market, selling directly to consumers and using those early boats to develop its electric propulsion technology. That platform is now being deployed in commercial applications where electrification can improve reliability, lower costs, and support ports that want to electrify. Founded in 2021, Arc has raised $110 million through their Series B and has scaled from delivering its first customer boat, which took 2 years to build, to now producing multiple boats per week, while also landing major commercial partnerships at working ports. In our conversation, Mitch walks me through his path from a childhood fascination with stocks and compounding interest to building and selling his first company in the personal finance space to betting big on electric boats and what electrification can unlock on the water. Mitch Lee, welcome to What It Takes.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Mitch, you grew up in San Jose. You were always close to water. And I understand you were a bit obsessed with family chores as a kid. Tell me about that and tell me about you as a kid and growing up in San Jose.
Yeah, so I grew up in San Jose to a family of boaters, people that love being out on the water. That is relevant to the story we're talking about today. My other great passion in life was personal finance. My parents instilled a love of that or an appreciation of that, certainly from a very young age. They would give us chores that we basically had to do as members of our family. But then there were certain chores that they would reward us with a quarter or nickel for taking out the trash or mowing the lawn. And I would do all of them. So I had an older sibling and a younger sibling, and I would race to complete all of the chores. In part because at the end of the week, they would tally up the chores. They would award,
Wow.
our I guess allowances, if you will, based on what we accomplished. And then we got to put them in these little like piggy banks that had either checking, savings, or charity. And the money that you put in the savings account, you couldn't spend for the next week, but it would accrue interest at an alarmingly high rate. Thinking back on it,
what was the rate?
I mean, it was something like 10% a
Nice.
week or a month. It was like,
Amazing.
unrealistically high, but the intent was to get you hooked on this idea of like, hey, money saved starts working for you. You could go save it, you could invest it, and that just starts to compound in a really compelling way. I got hooked on that idea early, and that just kind of took off. I got into investing at a very young age. I got into currency trading. And
when you say investing at a young age, I think you were 8. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I
okay.
was,
tell me about
8 years
8-year-old
old.
Investing.
Bought my first shares of Intel, 1 share of Intel actually. And then I don't know, the next day or the next week it split 2 for 1. So then I had 2 shares suddenly. And every day I would check stock price and it was just going up. And I was just like amazed at this idea that I had put money into an account and it was just like every day getting to be a larger and larger number. And that hooked me. Obviously investing is not that easy in practice. It was just this memorable first experience I had with it. And The rest is, I mean, again, I went from investing in Intel to then I invested in some other technology companies that I was familiar with. And by the time I hit high school, I had read so much, vacuumed up as many books as I could on the art of investing, and had done pretty well on the stock side of things, jumped into the currency side of things, started doing automated trading. That's a 24/7 market. And so I was doing all this like programming around currency trading.
At what
And
age?
I mean, this is when I
High
was
school.
entering high school. So
Yeah.
it was an
15.
interesting experience. I at the time, there was this like really great rally in currencies between the Great British Pound and US dollar. And I kind of rode that through this epic climb, felt like I could quit like high school at that point and just do this as a career. Had all this confidence built up because I went from like, I don't know, call it $1,000 to $10,000 or something. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is easy. It's so
Yeah.
easy to make money. And then like that was over a 3-month span. And then the next 3 months, it went from like $10,000 back down to 2,000. I still ended up, 100%
Yeah.
up over the span of 6
Right.
months, but
Yeah.
emotionally it took a toll. Really taught me that investing can get quite emotional, that you can get wrapped up in it, that I didn't really want to do that as a career because it was stressful. But I still have
Amazing
this love of it.
to learn that lesson in high school. It's incredible. What did your parents think in your friend group? Like, were you doing this with friends? Were you doing this on your own?
Yeah, I had an interesting personality as a kid because I was generally good at school. That does not necessarily translate into the professional craft, but I got good grades in school. But I was also a member of the football team and kind of presented as this confident, like jock sort of personality. And then so you balance that with like getting straight A's, also part of the football team as a captain, and also doing investment clubs and all this currency trading. And it's just kind of an eclectic mix uh, of a personality for me as as a young kid.
Yeah. Did you have a friend group that reflected that? Like, do you feel like you fit in with everyone or fit in with no one?
It's a fair question. I it's a really fair question. I don't think my friend group necessarily reflected my personal passions. Like I wasn't making friends with other people that were passionate about personal finance and chores and working jobs the way that I was. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I just kind of, I think you choose your friend group based off values alignment.
Yeah.
People that just kind of share the same underlying values or principles that you do.
Yeah. Tell me about your parents. I know they started with modest means, but eventually your mom worked at Intel and then your dad worked on semiconductors. Also, I wonder if there was any insider trading happening. It sounds like your first share was in Intel. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, tell me about
I,
that.
I think we're past the statute of limitations. I don't know that there was any insider trading.
This is on the record.
Yeah, I know. It's I mean, I think I don't even know that they talked to me about their companies. I think I was just like, that's a company I'm familiar with, so I bought it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, my parents were grew up from pretty modest means and just kind of kept working their way up and up through their own careers. My mom had a successful career at Intel. My dad at a couple of semiconductor companies. And both of them did what they could to take the experience that they were having in their workforce and still some of the lessons from that back on us as kids. Certainly made a big impression on us. I mentioned the chores side of things, teaching us the value of a dollar and teaching us from a very young age the value of investing and compounding. It's not always about just working harder. It's about putting your own money to work, your own resources to work.
You mentioned they had some set aside for charity too, as part of your
Yes,
allowance.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it was a core part of our upbringing that it wasn't just about trying to accumulate money. It was actually, I think they did a really good job of this. And it's a lesson I still hold on to today, that the goal is not just to accumulate money. Like what's the purpose in that? What's the value that you get back out of that? It's really about allocating what you have, the time, the money, the attention, to the things that give you the most happiness. So I they were big into, hey, it's not about like, don't spend money and put it all into savings. It's about making sure that you're giving back to the community and giving back to others along the way, especially as you generate, good fortune for yourself. And then the money that you do save, like, it should be saving for a purpose. It should be saving for things that you ultimately want that deliver you a lot of happiness. So it's not about cutting back on like going to movies or cutting back on this other stuff. It's really about figuring out what gives you the biggest sense of reward, and concentrating your attention, your energy, your money on those things.
Yeah, it's beautiful. In 2007, you go to Northwestern University. You do a double major in mechanical engineering and economics. Why Northwestern? Why mechanical engineering and economics? And what was your college experience like?
I think we ask a lot of college students to kind of come in and already know what they want to do and know what degree they want and what career they want. I was a very enthusiastic kid. I just had a lot of energy, and you could probably sense this, that I was I had these business ideas that I was pursuing, and creating like a yard working business and reselling things on eBay and becoming a pizza delivery person, and also starting an investment club. Like, I just had passion kind of applied everywhere in my life. One of the things I got very excited about was reading a lot of the like popular science articles, or just where is the cutting edge of technology. And at that particular moment in time, nanotechnology was this big craze. And so I looked around at the colleges that mentioned something about nanotechnology. Northwestern was one of them. I had applied to a bunch of different colleges. I think I got into all of them. And that put me in this conundrum of which one should I go to? I was expecting to kind of have the application process whittle down my options. And instead I did this big tour of the country and visited all the campuses. Northwestern had the absolute worst weather when I went, and I still enjoyed my experience. I enjoyed touring the campus, and I was like, hey, if I could like it when it's this gross and sleeting outside, then I probably like it the rest of the time. So opted to go there. I knew I wanted to get out of California, get some exposure to a different part of the country, a different part of society, and I'm very glad I did. It was a great experience for me. My degree was driven by, I arrived at Northwestern. I thought I was going to like nanotechnology. Turns out it's kind of a research craft, and I didn't love the research side of things. And so I was like, well, let's get a degree in the most versatile thing that I know, which is mechanical engineering. I also, as you have heard, have this passion for personal finance, for economics. Those subjects were both interesting and came pretty naturally to me. So I picked up a double major there. And again, that was just kind of a pursuit of personal passion for me.
And beyond the classes you were taking, what else were you into in college, and what were you like?
Well, I played football in high school. I picked up more than my fair share of concussions and back injuries from that. I thought about playing at the college level and opted out of that because I knew I was nowhere good enough to ever think about going pro. So it was like, this is probably a good off ramp for me. Instead, a friend convinced me to come out and start doing triathlons. And so previously, the longest I had run is probably one lap around a track. And
Wow.
I then got into endurance running and endurance biking and endurance swimming, and became very heavily involved in our triathlon club at Northwestern, and still love it. I still think it's a lot of fun to go out and compete in that capacity.
I do feel like it's a special person who thinks those things are fun, which I agree. Not that I've done triathlons, but just want to acknowledge that.
Fair.
So you graduate from Northwestern, you start working at Boeing before eventually co-founding your first startup, Penny, when you were 24, 25 years old. And then a few years later, it was just 3 years later, that Penny gets acquired by Credit Karma. Walk me through your early career and what you learned.
Yeah, I started at Boeing. I was working on their helicopter program out of Mesa, Arizona. It was a good experience for me in that it taught me a lot. I don't think I was the best Boeing employee. I had a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and it did not translate well into productivity because there wasn't a ton of mentorship. There weren't a lot of other people around my age that I could learn from. Um, I was kind of bouncing off the walls, just like wanting to go fast, and that's not the speed that they operated at least in my experience. And so I was also getting specialized very quickly. I was becoming a specialist in composites. There were only so many companies in the world that really cared about that specialty. So if I wanted to transition out of that role into a different company, there weren't going to be many options. So I retooled as a software engineer, went to the Bay Area, joined
When you
some.
say retooled, what does that mean? Like, how,
I went to kind of a workshop, or I mean, basically, at the time, Boeing, their engineering division was unionized, and so they had
hmm,
set hours. It was you actually worked kind of a
hmm,
40-hour week, and overtime required approval and all of this. So
hmm.
when you're just out
When
of
you want to
college,
do chores, you just want to do the chores,
when
the
you're
bonus
just out of
chores.
college and you work a 40-hour week, you have so much free time. Like that's it.
Totally.
Nowadays, if you got like a
Yeah.
40-hour week and family and all these other
Yeah.
obligations, like they accumulate over time, and it
hmm
it feels like you don't have as much free time. But
hmm
I had nothing else going on. And so I, I mean, 40 hours a week, I was just like, I have
Yeah.
infinity free time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was still training a lot for triathlons, and then I'd spent a lot of time just coding on the side. And what I really like, I developed a pretty good proficiency around programming over the span of basically a year. And then it was, I need to actually go get some level of credential there. Um, so that a company would take me seriously. A company would take that seriously. And it helped that I had already have an engineering degree, had exposure to scripting in college, spent a year intensely kind of training myself on my free time. And then I went to this like workshop or boot camp that kind of gave me just enough of a credential to break into a software company. And the rest was, from then on out, I identified as a software engineer, or software developer, bounced around some startups in the Bay Area, and yeah, coming out of one of them, I almost accidentally co-founded Penny. It was just
What
a
do you mean accidentally?
project of, well, I mean, it was a project of personal passion for me. It was
Hmm.
just a concept I really liked. It was this idea
Hmm.
that finances are really complex. You'll hear this theme with me a lot. It's I spend a lot of my time having talked to people about their personal finances and trying to coach them, and or at least give my advice where possible. Um, and what I sensed was just a lot of fear, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of guilt, a lot of anxiety, and thought, hey, one of the best ways to break through that is with conversation, rather than looking at a spreadsheet of your finances, seeing a bunch of rows that are highlighted in red, or like it. That's a pretty intimidating way to approach finances versus somebody talking to you about it. So the thesis behind Penny was, we'll have a conversation with you about your finances. This is before the AI boom. So it was a different form of chat, but it was just a product I wanted to go explore. And I did it with one of the best software engineers I had ever met. And we kept building on it, and we got a little bit of traction, then we got a little bit more traction. And then we had to incorporate because the traction was taking off, and we needed to like protect ourselves on the liability side and sign a contract. And then we raised some money for it. And it taught me a ton about venture capital and the incentives of venture capital, or how do you run a business that is venture backed. Um, so it was a very good learning opportunity for me. We ended up being acquired, went through the whole process of integrating the product, um, scaling it up, starting to manage other teams at the company as well. And ultimately, decided I wanted to go back and start something on my own.
What did you learn about venture capital and those incentives?
We prided ourselves on the efficiency with which we spent money. We were thrifty. We were trying to make the capital that we had raised last as long as we could and go as far as we could with that money. And that's not actually necessarily what sets you up well to be a venture-backed business. What they are looking for is, it's a very power law driven business that a few companies are going to generate the substantial majority of the returns for investors. So they're looking for companies that can grow at just an alarmingly fast pace over the span of 7 to 10 years. And we were really, we again took this kind of like, we were building a plane rather than building a rocket ship. And if you're going to be venture back, you really want to build a rocket ship, and investors expect you to strap yourself to that rocket ship, light the fuse, whether or not it takes off from the launch pad. If you do that enough times, one of them will, and will reach kind of space and escape velocity. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what made you ready to sell after just 3 years?
We were at this interesting point of the business where we were actually starting to get quite a bit of traction. We were starting to generate some revenue. And what was becoming increasingly clear is like, we had built a really compelling product, maybe a really compelling feature, but not necessarily a really compelling business, or at least it was not necessarily the business that we wanted to go scale, because we were going to increasingly have to lean on advertising and product placement and all these other forms of revenue generation, which makes sense. Businesses need to make money. But it wasn't what we were personally passionate about. What we were passionate about was the financial literacy side of it. And the acquirer had come to us and said, hey, what we can offer you is, I mean, in addition to an acquisition, in addition to proceeds for the company, access to a massive member base where we already have a business engine that generates a ton of revenue, and you can really go focus on scaling the financial literacy side of this, scaling the financial education aspect of it. That was really compelling to us. And so we said yes, and very happy we did. I think I had learned a lot of lessons from that company, and I think it was a good outcome for us. It was certainly a good outcome for the product that we had built, or the feature that we had built, which was this chat system to engage with your finances, and happy with it.
And how life-changing of an event was that for you? I understand it wasn't yacht money, certainly not electric yacht, but somewhere between car and house?
Yeah. It was enough that I was no longer worried about where my next paycheck is coming from, willing to take another pretty big swing, short of me buying yachts, certainly.
So I understand you're still at Penny when you have the initial spark of the idea for what would become Arc Boats. What was that spark?
Yeah, it might have actually predated Penny. When you're working on a startup, it's not like your brain turns off. It's not like you stop having other ideas. And so I would still have those when I was at Penny, of just things that interested me, ideas that I found compelling. And I would write them down into a document. And one of the ideas I wrote down was, shortly after I had experienced an electric car for the first time, my mind, as growing up as a boater, my mind immediately jumped to, somebody should do this for boats. Like, this makes even more sense than it does for cars. So I had written that down. And then what ends up happening is, over time, my mind will drift back to that idea, and I'll add a little bit more detail about why it makes sense, or how you might approach that problem, or and so I would just kind of fill it out. And that was one of those ideas that just kept filling out, because my mind kept returning to it, of like, this seems to make a lot of sense. Somebody should do it.
Do you remember where you were or what EV it was that you sat in when you first had the idea?
I do. It was a Tesla. It was down in San Diego. I was on a trip, and I think we I don't actually I don't remember how we ended up with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like some weird quirk in the rental car system, or I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
borrowed a car or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I distinctly remember sitting in it and just immediately having this feeling of every other car feels 10 years behind this. Like this feels like the future now. It was so software forward and so Spartan everywhere else. It was just such a clean driving experience. You'd have one screen in there. Made a very big impression on me.
Okay, so you have this idea, you write it down on your list of ideas, you keep coming back to it, but you're still at Credit Karma post acquisition. What eventually made you leave Credit Karma to pursue this kind of wild idea of electric boats?
So Credit Karma itself was acquired by Intuit, which effectively took Credit Karma public and gave me liquidity on the equity that I'd been sitting on. I'd also just had my first kid and was doing some soul searching on my leave and thinking about, hey, I don't really need to worry about my next handful of paychecks. What do I want to do with my life in light of having some level of financial freedom here? And I wanted to go work on an idea that I felt just crossed this threshold of, it sounds silly when I say it, but like was good for the world, in an unambiguous way, meaning you could tell pretty much anyone what you're working on. And, for example, I'm working on replacing or displacing these gas guzzling boats that exhaust down into the water with something that's electric that doesn't pollute our waters, pollute our air. Most people are going to say, oh, I'm glad you're doing that. And so it's just something that kind of had that sort of positive impact that I could feel good about working on day in and day out, even through the challenging times. I was really excited about that.
Yeah. So tell me more about this problem that you couldn't unsee once you saw it. Like you mentioned, gas guzzling and polluting and all that. Like, tell me more about the problem and then how did you and your eventual co-founder go about thinking how you might solve it?
Yeah. If for anyone that has spent time boating, you could probably autocomplete what complete this statement of the best days of a boat owner's life are the day you buy it and the day you sell it. You've heard it before, and it really speaks to the pain of boat ownership. It's a very obvious problem. This is not like gas cars. You are way more exposed to the downside of combustion engines on gas boats. It's closer to a gas lawnmower or leaf blower. They're loud. You've got these noxious fumes coming off of them. They are a pain to maintain and keep up. They run out of fuel on you. If you leave them out, they, deteriorate really quickly. You've got to winterize them. So, if you happen to leave your, I don't know, gas in the gas tank, it starts to separate and that creates its own form of headaches. It's very expensive. These things are super consumptive of fuel. They're so power hungry. So there's just not actually a lot of redeeming qualities about owning a gas boat. There's a ton of redeeming qualities about actually using a gas boat. It's fun to be out on the water. It's fun to spend time with family that way and connect with the water. So the problem was very clear to me. The solution was also pretty clear. The question was really one of timing, which is when does the technology get mature enough that it can actually be applied to marine environments, particularly given that they consume a lot of power. So you need high power electronics on board, lots of energy storage in the form of big battery packs. And when Ryan and I started looking at this, we were starting to get this itch of, hey, we think the supply chains exist to go do this, to actually go electrify at least a portion of the marine market. And we started in this kind of what we called a luxury cruiser, but really started pointing at the wake sport market in particular. We said, it's right at the cutting edge of where the technology is today. And certainly by the time we're scaling production here, we think that will have continued to develop and make what we're doing possible and most importantly, possible at a competitive price.
Mm-hmm. And the idea was to borrow this technology that the EV industry had already figured out and had begun to scale.
Exactly. Yeah. It's obvious idea. It is not taking a lot of what I call market risk because we're just making better boats. It's not a new type of boat. It's just the same boat you know and love, but better, but quieter, more fuel efficient, no free of fumes and easier to maintain and more reliable and more software forward and all these other great things about it. More convenient to recharge than it is to lug gas cans around. It has all those benefits to it. So we're not really taking market risk, again, just better boats. We're not taking technology risk because we're leveraging what's been going on in the automotive industry to, like, we're just kind of borrowing or leveraging that technology to pursue marine applications. It's really an execution risk challenge, which is, even though the technology exists, even though the theory makes a lot of sense, actually putting those pieces together is really hard because they're these complex systems with a lot of interactions, and production is really hard. And it turns out that actually assembling a team, collecting the capital necessary for it, and deploying it in a way that leads to a production system that churns out boats that produce positive margins, like doing all of those things is actually quite challenging.
Even as a passenger, you mentioned as an owner, it's obvious. Even as a passenger, I was on a boat in Mexico over the New Year, and same, it's smelly, it's loud. You couldn't sit in the back, otherwise this incredible experience. But yeah, had that been electric, that would have been
Yeah.
even more magical. So even
One
as
of
a
the best
passenger, I
sales
see the value.
techniques we have for boats today is just have people experience it.
Totally.
It sells itself once you're on it.
Yeah. Similar to EVs.
Yeah.
As was your experience. You mentioned Ryan. Tell me about Ryan. When did you first meet? When did you first sync up on this idea? Who convinced who to ultimately go for it?
That's up for debate.
We'll get Ryan on the show.
Ryan and I went to Northwestern together. I met him. He was a year below me. We have different stories on how we both kind of came into each other's orbit. I took very studious notes. I was a nerd, and
like notes about how you met?
No. Notes from my classes.
Okay.
I had fully embraced that I was a nerd at this point, and had one
by
of those,
college you get to own it.
Yeah, I owned it. I had one of these like tablets that you could write on, a Fujitsu like twist tablet, and I would take really good handwritten notes in all of my classes. Those would get distributed out. I didn't realize this, but I'd like share it with a few of my friends, and then those friends would just like, I don't know, mass email it to the rest of the school, apparently.
Amazing.
So Ryan saw my name a bunch off the notes that I would take. I got to know Ryan because he was one of those engineers that was, his engineering knowledge translated to the real world very well. There are people like me that are maybe book smart, that for whatever reason, school just comes a little more naturally. And then there are people like Ryan that are perfectly talented in a school environment, but then they get into like a workshop and you really see them shine. And that's Ryan. And so it was kind of his applied engineering that spoke to me, that I grew to respect him, even as a year below me. So I go on to Boeing. I'm there for a year. I know basically nobody. There's a pretty big age disparity for me there. So I'm like struggling to find my path at Boeing. I go back the next year to recruit from Northwestern. I'm on Ryan's interview panel, and I'm 2 thumbs up on him, and really put on the sell to convince him to come to Boeing. He does. And so we
You're like, come,
there.
I swear, it's great.
I was like,
You're gonna love it.
I mean, we had a good time. We both left after quite a short period of time, but we overlapped there for, I don't know, it was probably less than a year. But again, going back to those 40-hour weeks, like we just had tons of times on our hands. So we would do a lot of brainstorming in our off hours, of batting around different ideas and hanging out socially a ton. So we formed a really strong relationship in that period. He went on to SpaceX. from an outsider, I mean, I was bouncing around a bunch of software companies, but I loved watching the SpaceX journey from the outside, and I would always be texting him around any sort of launch or any sort of big milestone. Um, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. I guess he's no longer at SpaceX, but like he occasionally invited me to some of the SpaceX parties, which
Oh, cool.
was just quite the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept the friendship alive over
Mm.
those years, and when he was ready to start looking at something new, he's one of those people that I was like, if I ever get an opportunity to work with him, I would love to. I deeply respect his technical capabilities, his business savvy, and we've got this strong relationship formed over a decade, and
Yeah.
those are the types of people you want to partner with.
Yeah. Yeah. What did he think about the idea?
He liked it. Now he didn't grow up as a boater, but for him, it was a cool engineering challenge. It got him into an industry that has a lot of I guess like the technical learnings that he would get through this process were broadly applicable across a variety of industries, and so it's a good skill set to pick up. It's a product that is exciting, that you can develop on a really fast timeline. So rather than dealing with aerospace timelines, which, I mean, SpaceX moved very fast, but it's still aerospace timelines. You're still doing, I mean, safety critical work on a lot of that. We started ARC and within 3 months had a boat on the water. And like it's just a different speed that you could move
Yeah.
at. So he was excited about that. And I mean, the idea again made sense. Like it's this funny thing about founding a company that substantially all founders are naive in some way when starting a company. If you know how hard it is, you probably don't start it. Once you get into it, you're in it and you could keep going. But that activation energy of like, if I knew how hard this was, would I have started it with the same gusto that I did? Probably not. So we were just kind of naively optimistic that this was a pretty straightforward idea, that we knew how to do it, that we could go scale production super quickly and have 3 models in market in 2 or 3 years, and turned out to be quite a bit harder than that. But the basic premise for the company is still around today.
How did that actually go? So you start the company in 2021. You and Ryan
Yeah.
launch Arc Boats. Yeah. How did that vision for how it would go play out?
Well, there are a few
Especially
different
in the
angles
early
of this.
days.
I mean, one of it was just from a technical perspective, it was more challenging than we expected. It turned out that we were building an electric vehicle, which is very complex. I mean, with a battery pack that's 2 or 3 times the size of anything you'd find in an electric car. So yeah, fun fact, that's pretty hard. And then you still have to do all the software and firmware on top of that. And oh, by the way, you're trying to do it with a tiny fraction of the team that automotive companies bring to bear on this. That's a really hard challenge. And then the other thing that we tackled was the actual boat building side of this, because to intelligently integrate the battery packs, you really need to control the structures, the design of the structures. So we're like trying to learn how to build boats, trying to learn how to design boats and build them, while also trying to learn how to do an entire electric powertrain, the firmware that sits on top of that, the software that sits on top of that, the telemetry system. And maybe the hardest part of all of it was make it aesthetically pleasing enough that people actually want to buy it. Like the furthest skill set that we had was how you do soft goods, how you make upholstery look nice, how you make a dash look nice. Like those were way outside of our wheelhouse. So those all proved to be more challenging than we expected. And it took us about roughly 10 to 12 months before we had the first Arc One, the first product we were bringing to market, constructed. It took us another 12 months before we delivered one to a customer, because the jump in going from, hey, this is like 90% functional, up to this is something you could hand to a customer, know that they could do whatever they want to it and it's going to be safe, reliable. That's a big jump. and not many people are able to make that. We are very proud that we generated our first revenue as an electric vehicle company within 2 years of starting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a crazy fast speed by electric vehicle standards, but it was a slog, and there were some dark moments along the way.
What was the darkest?
I mean, the run up to the first customer delivery, where it was gut punch after gut punch. Like we just could not seem to get things working at the level that we needed. And it was the winter, and we were trying to do all this testing out in cold, wet conditions, and it was setback after setback, and the customers were kind of piling up we just had delay after delay to get it to the first customer. And it was a stressful, intense environment with people pulling some really long hours and people feeling pretty disheartened by us not being able to just like cross over that line. Also, that effort is what ultimately paid off. It was those long hours. It was that intensity and the stress of that environment that forced us to get creative on how we were testing and scope the problem well, and get comfortable with the operating profile of the boat and do all of this crazy testing. We eventually did that, and we delivered the first boat. And then after that milestone, we started to settle into a rhythm of, okay, we've crossed probably the hardest part of what we've done. Handing a product like that, a product somebody spent $300,000 on, that is as safety critical as something like that is a really hard bar to clear.
Yeah, indeed. You talked earlier about execution and how ultimately it all comes down to execution and everything that went into leading up to delivering that first product to the customer. Tell me about building your team. Like, how did you assemble the team to do that? What did you get right and what did you get wrong?
We got a lot right. I'm very proud of the team that we've built at ARC. It is a high ownership environment. It's a super talent dense team, unlike anything that you see in the marine industry. A lot of the founding team came from SpaceX, where Ryan was coming from. He led a team there. People enjoyed working with and for him and were eager to follow him as he kind of took off on this new endeavor. So, I was probably one of the only people not from SpaceX in the first dozen. We ended up getting in a little bit of hot water with them for the people that we were taking. They started walking people out if they said they were going to ARC.
Wow.
Which was
high honor.
I don't know.
High honor.
Yeah, I guess it is a high honor. I was like, we're not competitive with SpaceX here,
right.
but we're making boats. But they were worried about kind of an attrition problem. It was a sharp, hardworking group of people right out of the gate that set the tone for the rest of the company. I think the things that we might have overcorrected on is we were very engineering heavy, and there's a lot of things to like about that. But one of the downsides is that every engineer, myself included, will look at a problem and say, I could do that better. They'll look at any sort of marine part and just be like, like this glove box, I could do that better. And you're like, we don't need to vertically integrate the glove box. And yet we did. And it's kind of mistakes like that of if you have too many smart people, they could create their own problems that would not otherwise need to exist. And so as far as problems go, that's a pretty good one to have. And the rest of the workload eventually caught up with the team that we had.
Coming up, Mitch shares more about ARC's technology. But first, a word from Powerhouse Innovation. What It Takes has always been focused on the founders shaping the future of energy and industry. Behind the scenes, Powerhouse Innovation, our sister company to Powerhouse Ventures, partners with corporations and investors to source and evaluate emerging technologies and identify the opportunities that matter most. Our clients include DNV, Mitsui, Google, and many more. Powerhouse Innovation brings together an industry-leading network, deep data foundation, and a PhD-led team of experts to help our clients move faster and with confidence. By staying closely connected to startups and domain experts, we provide direct access to top founders and a real time read on market shifts. Recent client engagements have spanned solid state transformers, edge computing, accelerated interconnection for data centers, and next gen geothermal. This year, Powerhouse Innovation began working with new clients Black & Veatch, a global EPC developing human critical infrastructure, and Rio Tinto, one of the world's largest mining companies. We're supporting their teams in accessing energy and storage solutions for co-located data centers and AI-driven materials discovery. If your organization is looking to accelerate your innovation or investment goals, we'd love to connect. Email hello@powerhouse-innovation.co to get in touch. And now back to the show. Tell me more about ARC's technology. You mentioned, battery packs that are twice the size of that of an EV. You mentioned borrowing what EVs had already created for that industry. Yeah, tell me about product development, prototyping, and then the tech itself that you're ultimately integrating into this product.
Yeah, the premise for the company is quite simple, which is the industry today is built on combustion technology, and it's poorly suited to the marine environment. This is especially true as you get into higher and higher power levels. We're pretty good as an industry, as a country, at making engines in the low hundreds of horsepower. We're pretty good at 400 horsepower engines. When you get into 4,000 horsepower engines, we don't make a lot of those. And so they're very expensive and they are very inefficient. And that creates a lot of these problems. So the thesis is, and again, you're exposed to a lot of the downsides of combustion engines when you're on a boat in a marine environment. So the thesis is very simple. Everything should be powered on electric powertrains. That doesn't necessarily mean battery electric powertrains. Hybrid electric, it could be diesel electric, it could be powered by a small nuclear reactor. Aircraft carriers are powered by nuclear reactors with an electric powertrain. Cruise ships have electric power plants on board. So the basic premise makes a lot of sense. What we wanted to do and what our vision is power everything on the water. That's what we want to do. How we get there was, let's start in the consumer industry, because we could go develop our underlying technology, which is the powertrain, which is, electric motors tied to battery packs, the wire harnessing, the firmware, the cooling systems or thermal systems, again, firmware controls, all of that stuff, everything that makes the boat go. That's kind of the core technology that we're developing. We developed it first in the consumer industry because very quick to get to market. It's a pretty low barrier to entry. It's a low regulatory overhead. You can get through a ton of feedback cycles or iteration cycles really quickly. And the products themselves are quite lucrative, that once you get into production on it, we make tens of thousands of dollars a boat that we produce. It does not take many boats that you need to make to get into the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. So it's a very lucrative place to go develop the technology. Once you've done that, you then can start scaling that technology up into other applications. Basically proliferating it across other sectors of the marine industry, and again, scaling it up into higher and higher power applications.
Early on, you got some pretty notable and unique investors. Who are they, and how did you get them?
Andreessen Horowitz led our seed round, and we brought on some other great investors. After we announced our first product, which was just 6 months later that we announced it, there was a lot of positive reaction to that announcement, a lot of enthusiasm. Some of that enthusiasm came from some celebrity investors, and we ended up bringing on some of those celebrity investors into kind of a strategic round. The rationale is, in addition to building the technology, building the boats, we're also building a brand. And who better to help us build the brand than people that are world-class at this, that have proven at world-class at building their own brands. So that was kind of the idea behind it. And we brought on a handful of well-known names. I'm not going to
Can you
mention all of
mention
them.
who?
And
Can you mention
I
some?
mean, it's, uh, like Clay Thompson's an investor, for example. So a famous basketball player as one example, and Kevin Durant, another basketball player. There are some musicians and actors and actresses and
And they
other
reached out to
athletes.
you?
Well, yeah, I mean, so some of them had actually reached out to Andreessen Horowitz and said, "Hey, this seems pretty exciting." And Andreessen or A16Z has it has a network of this high profile individuals that they will bring into companies where it makes sense. And this is one of those cases where it made a lot of sense. So we did it. Most of our funding, substantially all of our funding, has come from institutional investors. So I'm certainly happy to have the support of some of those people. And I want to reiterate that again, our company is substantially funded through institutional capital.
I want to talk about the different models and the iteration of those models from the ARC 1 to the ARC Sport. You've iterated on the technology a ton. How did it evolve across these models, and what failed that you thought would work?
What failed that I thought would work is a lot. The ARC 1 was a really exciting product in what it represented, which was the potential behind electric boats. We had a small group of people that jumped at an opportunity to own one, and we're incredibly thankful to have their support. I hope and expect most of them love their ARC 1s. But it wasn't really a market that existed. It wasn't a style of boat that would sell a ton of, and we knew that from the outset. We were making something pretty unique.
Mm-hmm.
When we pivoted
Unique, like
over to
luxury, or unique how?
we called it a luxury cruiser, which is not really a market. It's got a pretty novel seating layout to it. It's it feels almost like you're riding in, like, I don't know, a spaceship. It's got this giant windshield and pretty simple helm area with just like one large touchscreen display on it. The purpose of that program was to, again, get as many learnings as we could as quickly as possible and get boats into the field so that we would start learning from how customers use their boats. And I mean, at this point, ARC 1s have been through hurricanes. They've gotten dropped in incredibly hot lakes, incredibly cold lakes. They've been stored through winters. And we just collect all those learnings, and all these boats are telemetering health data about them, environmental data about them. So we take all that information, we go leverage it in the ARC Sport. Now, a lot of that led to the next generation of this underlying technology, the next generation of our powertrain. Some of the challenges that we had, well, I mean, one of them was when you remove a combustion engine, which generates a lot of noise, a tremendous amount of noise, deafening amount, you end up starting to hear these other small noises on a boat. I distinctly remember delivering the first ARC 1, and the customer gets on board and he seems super excited, and he goes, sitting at the captain's chair, and he goes, "What's that noise?" And what he was hearing was a tiny little fan cooling off the touchscreen display. And I was like, "Oh,
like
no,
too quiet.
What have we done?" Yeah, we've generated new problems here. And I mean, we were able to push an over-the-air update to his boat to basically turn that fan off for most of the time, because it turned out it wasn't really necessary. So solve that noise issue. But it was just an example of, oh, right, we solved one problem and introduced now 15 different tiny noises. One of the big ones was a gearbox. We had a lot of struggles with a gearbox on the ARC 1, ended up having to design our own. When I thought that's a pretty standard part we could get off the shelf, and it turned out that was not true. When it came to the ARC Sport, we just deleted the gearbox. We said, we're going to design the system in a way that does not rely on a gearbox, and that was a way better solution for us. And as an example of us kind of learning.
Yeah, I feel like the solutions are often, we think of, how to make something better versus just take it away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's complexity to being able to take it away, but it's it was definitely the right decision for us. So again, we then go develop that powertrain and harden it in the ARC Sport. I feel, I mean, we had to solve a bunch of challenges. Like a good example of this is um, wire harnessing. Wire harnessing is basically connecting all the electrical components on the boat together. And it turns out there are thousands of different connections that need to all connect. It's sensors on every different battery module and all the little lights and everything that plug in addition to charging cables and the cable that gives the motor power and all these different things. It's a lot of wiring. So you go put that on a boat, then you put it on a trailer and you ship it 3,000 miles across the country on a trailer that doesn't really have shock absorbers. So you're just vibrating that boat for 3,000 miles. And if any single wire shakes loose even a little bit, then you have a problem. And early on, we had many of those problems. It was a huge challenge for us to overcome. We have since gotten dramatically better at this. It's one of those competencies that I now feel quite comfortable in our ability to do this. But it's really hard to take shortcuts on that. Like you need to go through the learning cycles. You need to find out what works for the specific application that we're applying this to. You know, you could bring somebody in that has experience with wire harnessing and it's still not going to be perfect out of the gate. You have to go through these learning cycles. But now that we have, we're quite good at it. I feel quite confident in it. And the challenge shifts to scaling that up into like higher and higher production rates. That same competency for wire harnessing, for cooling systems, for battery pack assembly, that is the competency that we tap into when it comes into other types of programs that we're pursuing. So commercial applications of our technology, it leverages that same underlying competency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know it takes a ton of resources to do what you're doing, being a CapEx intensive business. So since you started ARC Boats in 2021, you've raised 110 million through your Series B, with more announcements to come in the coming months. In addition to the celebrities that we talked about, who has backed you along the way?
Andreessen Horowitz led our seed round right out of the gate and took a wild swing on me and Ryan and a pretty crazy idea. At that point, it was just honestly a napkin sketch for, we wanted to make electric boats. Lower Carbon Capital joined in, Abstract joined in, and they've been with us at every stage of the journey. Eclipse led our Series A and has been our biggest backer ever since then. Menlo came in at the Series B. We're bringing in some new investors hopefully pretty soon. And I mean, we've been incredibly fortunate to have the caliber investors that we've had, and also the conviction from those investors that this is one of those businesses that it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to execute on, and you need to be patient. Internally as a company, we are quite impatient. We are pushing a very aggressive pace. As an investor, there's a level of patience that comes with, we set lofty timelines. We try to go hit those. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. What we're doing over time is compounding enterprise value, though, that it can take time to build, but when you build it is very defensible. What we're doing is hard. Spinning up a production system is hard. And then once you get there, competing with it is actually substantially hard. So it's very defensible revenue once you get it. But again, there's patience involved in that process.
So far, what round has been the easiest and hardest to raise? And it could be including any current efforts. And then what do you think other founders should know based on your experience fundraising?
I think every round has gotten harder. The seed round is a bet on two people.
Totally. Team and dream.
Idea. It's exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think we were fortunate that we kind of pattern matched as two founders that have a very strong relationship, complement each other's strengths nicely. And we're pursuing a lofty ambition. It's also a good time to raise. It was early 2021. Our Series A, the expectations were a little higher. We were fortunate at that point to have Eclipse come in and kind of preempt the rounds. They saw something that they liked, and they saw the process with which we were building. They saw the focus that we had on learning as fast as possible. And they gave us a lot of credit for that and ended up preempting the A. But the expectations go up. It's like, okay, great. You have access to more capital. Well, now you need to go generate a really strong return on that capital. So by the time the Series B rolls around, it's like, yeah, great. You had delivered ARC ones. You had come to market in 2 years. You generated revenue. Like, these are all great things, but what else? Like, how do you continue growing along that trajectory? It was a much worse time to raise capital.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think that we were quite lucky in that we said we were going to do something, we did it, and that execution can build conviction in investors to go, continue to invest in a company.
Yeah. You mentioned production and ramping production of your boats. When you started, you were doing one boat a month, maybe? Well, not even. It sounds like it took a year just to get to kind of a prototype, another year to the first customer, and then from there, one a month. And recently, now you're doing a couple boats a week. Is that right?
Yeah. So we kind of built the ARC ones. It was batch production. We always planned to make it a limited run, capture as many learnings as we could from it. Kind of like the early Tesla Roadster, where it was a limited period of time they were making them before they took those learnings and applied them to the Model S. That's a similar path that we took. So we started production of the ARC Sport, customer production of the ARC Sport, just over a year ago, and we started at a rate of about one boat a month. And even that was a challenge. We're now up to multiple boats a week, and continuing to ramp up from there. It's the challenge of doing that is it's not just, can you scale production up by doubling the size of the team, by doubling the number of tools that you have, the square footage you're using. What we're trying to do, and what we have been able to do over the past year, is increase production while also increasing margins, while also improving the efficiency of the people building the boats, so that somebody today is 2 times as efficient as they were a year ago, because we have better specialization, better tooling, better process, simpler designs. So that's the process that we're going through. And again, it's not just, well, can you just throw more money at it and scale it up? Yes, you can, but you sacrifice margins. What we care about is actually building the discipline in the business to go generate cash from this business, because the purpose of what we're doing on the consumer side was develop the technology, harden it, deploy it into the field, get all of those learnings, but do that in a segment that's lucrative, that actually supports other parts of the business and the R&D that's going on elsewhere in the business, to take that same technology, scale it up to other applications.
And then tell me more about your recent traction with the Port of Los Angeles, your recently announced road transportable tugboat, and then this $160 million strategic commercial agreement with Curtin Maritime.
Yeah. Roughly a year ago, we started, we were kind of at the maturity level that we had this electric powertrain that is supporting the ARC Sport program, starting to scale up that ARC Sport program. And we were starting to feel this pull into other segments of the consumer market, but also other segments in the commercial market. And we started pursuing that or entertaining that. And the demand that we saw on the commercial side was far exceeded our expectations. The first thing that drew us into that was, we got some interest in electrifying a smaller tugboat. So these are things that kind of push barges around in like harbors or bays, kind of smaller on the scheme of commercial craft, not that much bigger than an ARC Sport in terms of length. It's substantially more massive. It has a lot more steel to it. It's a lot deeper. But it was able to leverage all that same technology that was powering the ARC Sport. We just kind of dropped it into this. So we brought that thing online in a matter of weeks, and proved very quickly that our technology can apply to these other sectors in a really compelling way. There was a lot of enthusiasm generated from that. In parallel, we were having discussions with commercial operators that were pursuing electrification due to the availability of grant funding, due to compliance restrictions on combustion technology, that we're starting to take interest in it. And we're running into a bunch of friction. We're running into, well, I'm trying to do this electrification project, but it involves 17 different parties, none of which really have the full picture of what's going on. And we came along and said we could do all of it. And we could do it cheaper, faster, and better than where we think the industry is at, because we have years of experience building these competencies with the components that you need to make this possible. Current Maritime was one of those people that we were in discussion with and got incredibly excited about what we were doing because it aligned so clearly with their vision, which is we want to enter a new market. We want to enter the ship assist market. The way that we want to do that is with the best technology in the industry. That's what's going to give us a competitive advantage. And the best technology in the industry is electric. It gives you better costs, better operating profile. You can tap into grant funding for it. You avoid compliance burdens for it. The uptime is better. This is a strong business case for it. So they made it through the business lens and said, let's go order a fleet of these things. And, to really go in this the way they wanted to. It wasn't just, let's build one of it and kind of test it out. It's like, let's actually go spin up an operation where we're doing a lot of ship assist work.
Yeah, it's really cool. And all your manufacturing is in LA, is that right?
All of the manufacturing for smaller boats is out of our headquarters in LA. As we get into larger and larger vessels, those happen at boat yards or shipyards. So the current maritime vessels that we're building right now are happening up at a boatyard in Seattle, Snow, and are kind of cranking through that. And there are other programs in work that will kind of distribute mostly along the Western coast.
Zooming out, if we collectively succeed at electrifying boats, what does the industry look like in a decade, and what role is Arc Boats playing?
My goal is to power everything on the water, which sounds crazy, and certainly there will be competition and other people's powering other vessels, but that's the aspiration. That's what we're going for. We want to accelerate that transition, and the way that you accelerate it is make it economically viable. I don't want people to make these decisions based on environmental impact. That's a great side effect to what we're doing, and it's a personal passion of mine. Personal passion of a lot of people at ARC is to go decarbonize this industry, but people make purchases off of the economics of it. So that's where we're focused. Now, what that translates to over a 10-year span, I mean, certainly in some of these markets, I expect substantially all new boats to feature electric powertrains. I would be pretty shocked if the penetration in wake sport boats was not over 50%, but also on the commercial side, one of the cool parts about that is it's so economics driven that once you validate the economics, everyone will adopt. Every new vessel that gets built will adopt the best technology. Why would you go purchase a technology that's going to go on a boat that's going to last 30 years when you know it costs more, it's more expensive to maintain, and it's going to get regulated out in the span of years, or carry these very heavy compliance burdens over years, when there's a better, cheaper option that delivers all these benefits to you? 10 years from now, I expect every single commercial vessel to feature electric powertrain, because I think those economics will have been validated, and nobody's going to build a brand new vessel and not have a hybrid electric system on board.
We're going to close with our high voltage round. These are quick questions, quick answers, quick, like a few words per answer.
Sure.
Mitch, if you were an animal, what animal would you be and why? Not what you want to be, what you would be.
Oh, not what I would want to be, but my spirit animal, I guess.
Yeah.
Whew. That's a much harder question.
Isn't it? Do you know what you would want to be? That's easier.
Yeah. I would either want to be an eagle or a sea turtle, flying above the skies, kind of drifting under the water.
What do you think you actually are? I'm going to say collie, but you tell, or like husky, or like some kind of working dog.
Yeah, that is probably what I would be is some sort of husky working dog. I have had a strong work ethic from a very young age, and it's probably my greatest asset.
Good. What inspires you?
Other people. I get really inspired by
Mm,
motivated, ambitious people tackling hard
mm,
problems. It's
mm,
I try to surround myself with them.
mm. If you had to start a new career tomorrow, what would it be?
Something simpler. I would want to be an individual contributor, maybe
Uh,
a software developer, just like play my little role and let other
I
people make the really hard decisions.
get that. Other than yourself, to whom do you attribute your success?
There's a long list.
Mm,
I mean, my family certainly keep me grounded, support me through
mm,
long work hours.
mm,
There are plenty of other people that I've worked with along the way that have kind of shaped who I am as a leader.
mm,
I also don't know that I would say success yet.
mm,
We haven't
mm,
made it as a company.
mm, mhm. Tell me about a specific time you've failed.
I make a lot of mistakes, but I do not view mistakes as failures necessarily, as long as you're learning from them. I think my biggest failures have been failures of inaction, of having knowing somebody's not a good fit in the role and being too slow to do something about it, being too slow to tell them that they're not meeting my expectations. There are a couple of recent examples that I would point to where that has been the case, and I certainly failed them and failed the company in not acting faster.
Mm. Absolutely universal statement that I think every founder can and has made and has certainly come up on the show.
And you learn from it, and you become more decisive and
Yeah.
faster acting moving forward.
Hmm. Yeah. What is something that you thought was true that you no longer believe?
Hmm. Ooh, that's another tough one.
These are the hardest questions. We save them all to the end.
I am quick to update my Bayesian priors when new information comes in. So I don't hold on to beliefs for very long periods of time. One thing that I used to think was, hey, I wanted to like enforce work-life balance on people. That was at Penny. I was very big into work-life balance. Now I actually understand that it's all phases of life, and some people want to put in the work and are at a good stage of life to just work really, really hard. And what they are getting is compounding learnings over time, compounding experience. If you work twice as many hours as somebody over a 2-year span, you have maybe not doubled their experience level over that span, but you have certainly accelerated your accumulation of experience, and that puts you on a different career trajectory. That's a personal decision for people. And now I try to be a lot more supportive of
Mm-hmm.
whatever works for the individual. But I'm less prescriptive about, hey, everyone's got to, take time off or whatever. It's like, no, if you want to work hard, come alongside me.
Yeah. 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 You don't want to be the Boeing that didn't let you work more than 40 hours a week.
Exactly.
Yeah. When are you your best self?
It comes, I mean, there's just this foundation that you need to build off of. It starts with good sleep, exercise, time with the family, time outside. You get those things, and I'm certainly the best version of myself. And then, I mean, from a work perspective, it's surround yourself with people that you are motivated by, that you are inspired by, and that will draw out the best in you. That's certainly what draws out the best in me.
Mm. What is your worst trait?
I've got a lot of them. I don't know. I've got to pick one. That's tough. Probably the most consistent feedback that I have historically gotten is that I don't give a lot of positive affirmations. I feel positively about a lot of people. I'm a very efficient person. And so I tend
Mm.
to focus on like, here are the things that could go
Mm-hmm.
better.
Mm-hmm.
I treat people according to the golden rule, which is treat others how I want to be treated. I
Mm.
need to do it by the platinum rule,
Mm.
which is how do other people want to get treated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mm.
that's something that I'm still working on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you could change one thing about the world, what would it be?
I just wish people had more empathy, more open-mindedness. I think it's easy to get polarized. It's easy to villainize others. And I don't know. I really believe in the power of empathy, the power of like putting yourself in somebody else's shoes or just trying to understand where they're coming from, why they feel the way they do. I think if we had more of that, more open discourse, a bigger Overton window, those things I think would all shift us in a more positive direction.
Yeah, agreed. I try to live by the idea, seek to understand before seeking to be understood, which is so hard, but so universal and just constant work in progress.
It's so easy to cast people as like, the other side or just evil or like, this binary. When I mean, my default reaction to most situations is like really trying to understand why somebody might have a belief that they have.
Yeah.
And in doing that, it can bridge relationships.
Mm-hmm. If there was just one person who's going to hear this episode, who would you want it to be?
I don't like hearing myself talk, so I'm not sure how. It would probably be my co-founder Ryan, because I always like to improve, and I would love his perspective on, he always gives me honest feedback. So he'll listen to this and he'll be like, wow, you botched these 60 minutes of the interview. You did good in these 2 minutes. And I love getting that feedback because I don't know, this is the best analogy, but I'm constantly in this mindset of kind of an athlete where to make it at the highest level, you're constantly getting coaching. You're constantly refining your technique. You might go win a championship and still come back the next day and say, hey, like, what could I have done better? I'm going to study film to figure out how I do better. That's what keeps you at that level. And I have that same mindset. I'm just like, I'll go give an all hands presentation. I go immediately ask people like, hey, what could I have done better? What landed, what didn't? Ryan, again, my co-founder is somebody that gives me a lot of that feedback and helps me kind of improve day over day.
Finish these sentences for me. Companies fail because
they get complacent.
If you really knew me, you would know.
I mean, if you really knew me, you'd know that I love microwave food. I don't know.
We haven't heard that one. That's a good one.
Or I consume a lot of caffeine. That's
checks out. Success is
feeling fulfilled, is looking back on what you've accomplished and feeling proud of it and satisfied by it.
If I could have done one thing differently, I would have.
These are tough. Because it gets recorded into posterity. I mean, it's like the.
Someone will listen to this as part of your IPO.
I just like, wow, that's what he would have done differently. The way that I'd answer this question, which is not completing the sentence, is I think about it through looking back on my life. And I suspect the things that I wish I would have done differently is prioritize more time with friends and family. It's so easy to get caught up in the grind of day-to-day work and stress and anxiety that you can lose sight of those relationships. And I guess I wish I would have found more ways to prioritize some of those relationships.
I'm most proud of
the company we're building. It is a labor of love, a lot like a family is. And I'm probably most proud of the family, but in this context, certainly the company, the collection of individuals that we've brought together to pursue this mission.
And last question, to build a successful startup, what it takes is?
Naive optimism and a whole lot of perseverance.
Well said. Mitch Lee, thank you so much for joining me. I've loved learning more about you and ARC boats, and I'm happy you're doing what you're doing in the world.
Thank you. Fighting the good fight.
Indeed. Mitch Lee is the co-founder and CEO of ARC Boats. Join us each month on What It Takes for stories of the founders building our clean, energy abundant future, their upbringings, their risks, their failures, and their breakthroughs that are transforming our world. Before we wrap, a quick reminder, come work with us. We're hiring an executive assistant and a marketing and communications manager to support both Powerhouse Ventures and Powerhouse Innovation. If either role sounds like a fit for you or someone you know, you can learn more at powerhouse-ventures.co/careers or via my recent LinkedIn posts. What It Takes is produced by Powerhouse Ventures and Powerhouse Innovation. Powerhouse Ventures backs seed stage startups developing innovative software across clean energy, mobility, and industry. If you are thinking about building something in this space, you can learn more at powerhouse-ventures.co and get in touch with us there. Powerhouse Innovation partners with leading corporations and investors to source and evaluate disruptive startups shaping the future of energy and industry. You can learn more and get in touch via powerhouse-innovation.co. And if you are enjoying the show, you can support it by leaving us a rating or review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And if you know someone who you think might like this episode with Mitch Lee of Arc Boats, we'd love it if you shared the link with them. I'm Emily Kirsch. Julia Ranney is our producer. Christopher McGovern is our media engineer, and original music by Sean Marquand. This is What It Takes.